Temelad sat on the bed, her hands trembling. Akinmade entered, sensing the tension immediately. "I need a divorce," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Akinmade's heart stopped. "Temelad, no." "Why?" Tears filled her eyes. "I'm human, Akinmade. I bring danger and weakness into your life. You deserve better." He knelt before her, holding her hands tightly. "You're not a burden. I will protect you, always." She shook her head, pulling away. "I can't keep putting you at risk." Akinmade's voice broke. "Please stay." They sat in heavy silence, hearts breaking. Finally, seeing her resolve, he nodded, his chest hollow. "If this is what you truly want, I won't stop you." Temelad packed quietly, tears falling. At the door, she turned back, voice shaking. "I'll always remember all the good times together." Then she left. Akinmade sat alone on the bed, the room cold and empty without her. Akinmade knelt beside his father's bed, the scent of incense lingering in the heavy air. His father, the mighty alpha of their clan, was fading, his once strong hands now frail. Akinmade's heart ached as he watched the man who had led their pack with such power and wisdom, now weakened by age and illness. With labored breaths, his father lifted his hand and placed it on Akinmade's head, a final blessing. "My son," he rasped, his voice hoarse, "your future is bound to hers. You and Bisola. She is meant to be your mate, to stand by your side as you lead. You will face challenges, but the bond you share will keep you strong. Protect her, as you would the pack." Akinmade's throat tightened. The weight of his father's words settled heavily on his chest. He had always known Bisola was the one destined for him, but hearing it from his father on his deathbed made it all the more real, and the responsibility all the more daunting. "Father," Akinmade whispered, his voice thick with emotion, "I will protect her. I will protect our clan." His father gave a small, pained smile. "I know, son, I know." With a final, long exhale, the alpha's eyes closed, his spirit slipping away into the ether. Akinmade remained on his knees, his mind racing with the implications of his father's blessing, the weight of the legacy now resting squarely on his shoulder. Akinmade and Bisola had known each other since they could walk. As children, they roamed the vast gardens of the Awu estate, their laughter echoing between the ancient trees and stone paths. From mischievous hide-and-seek games to secret midnight talks on the rooftop, their bond was undeniable, deep, natural, and effortless. To everyone around them, it felt like destiny. The future alpha and his childhood friend, growing up side by side, slowly becoming more than just companions. The elders whispered about fate, about how the moon spirits must have intertwined their paths long before birth. Their families, especially the Banjos, encouraged the connection, proud of the growing closeness. As teenagers, they shared their first real glances, those lingering stares, filled with the kind of promise that only youth can believe in. Akinmade, ever loyal, ever steady, saw in Bisola the comfort of history and the shape of a future that made sense. She was beautiful, bold, and everyone said she was made for him. And Bisola, she smiled when he looked at her, held his hand without hesitation, walked beside him like it was her right. They weren't officially promised, but it was as though the universe had already made the choice for them. Akinmade stood before the clan, the weight of his father's mantle settling upon his shoulders. The once mighty alpha was gone, leaving behind a legacy he had to uphold. The mansion in Ibadan, their ancestral home, felt heavier now, as though the very walls carried the history and responsibility of his lineage. Lara, Akinmade's mother, graceful and ever watchful, stood by his side, her sharp eyes scanning the room. She had always been his confidant, someone who understood the intricacies of the pack's politics and its inner workings. Her loyalty was unwavering, even if her methods sometimes made Akinmade uneasy. Beside him, his siblings, strong, determined, yet still adjusting to the shift in power, watched with mixed emotions. They had all been trained for this moment, but none of them could predict how it would feel when it finally came. Now, the clan was Akinmade to lead. Together, Akinmade declared, his voice firm, "We will protect our legacy and our people. The challenges ahead are great, but we will face them as one." His siblings nodded, their resolve firm. Lara's eyes met his, a silent promise of support and happiness. But Akinmade couldn't shake the feeling that, despite the unity in the room, the greatest challenges were yet to come. Temelad hummed a soft tune as she worked, her fingers deftly weaving through the strands of a client's hair. The air in her cozy salon was filled with the familiar scent of hair oils and the low chatter of her clients. It was a place where people came not only to be transformed but to relax, and Tamerlane took pride in making it a sanctuary. Rimilkan, her lively best friend, sat perched on one of the salon chairs, chatting animatedly about the latest gossip. "You won't believe who I saw at the market today," she exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. Tamerlane laughed, wiping her hands on a towel as she listened. "Remy, you always know the best stories." As they continued to talk, Tamerlane felt a sense of peace. The salon was her world, one where she could forget the pressures of life, even if just for a moment. Rimilkan's energy was infectious, and with her by her side, the days always seemed brighter. At home, the evening light filtered through the windows, casting soft shadows on the walls of the modest living room. Yemisi, Tamerlane's mother, sat on the couch, her calm demeanor belying the curious glint in her eyes. Yemisi was kind-hearted and traditional, with a deep love for her daughter, though sometimes her old-fashioned ways led her to ask questions that made Tamerlane uncomfortable. Tamerlane entered the living room, carrying a tray of fruits. As she set it down, Yemisi smiled, her voice gentle yet probing. "So, my daughter, any special someone in your life? Someone you're thinking of, perhaps?" Tamerlane hesitated, her fingers lightly brushing the edge of the tray. "You know, Mommy, I'm focused on my work right now. No time for distractions." Yemisi raised an eyebrow, not fully convinced. "Work is important, yes. But life is short, Tamerlane. A woman needs love too. Are you sure there's no one? No one who catches your eye?" Tamerlane felt the familiar flutter in her chest at the thought, but quickly masked it with a smile. "Mommy, I'm just not looking. You know how things are with the salon, and besides, I'm not in a rush." Yemisi's gaze softened, but there was a knowing look in her eyes. "Love doesn't always wait, but I trust you, Tamerlane. You'll find what's right for you, in your own time." Tamerlane smiled, grateful for her mother's gentle concern but still unsure of what love truly meant for her, especially with all the thoughts that lingered in her mind. In the dimly lit corner of a trendy cafe, Bisola leaned in close to her boyfriend, Ola Martins, her eyes scanning the room to make sure no one was listening. She had always been composed, her beauty masking the sharp, calculating mind beneath. Tonight, she was ready to lay bare the truths she had kept hidden from everyone, especially Akinmade. "Ola," she began softly, her voice laced with an undertone of frustration. "You know how important this is, right? Akinmade is just a stepping stone for me, he's a means to an end." Ola raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised by the cold honesty in her voice. "What do you mean?" Bisola's lips curled into a smirk, one that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm with Akinmade for my family's status. His bloodline, his position as the alpha. It all puts us in a place of power. My family needs this. We need this." She leaned back in her chair, her eyes narrowing with ambition. "I'm not in love with him, Ola. It's all about what he can offer us." Ola, stunned into silence for a moment, finally spoke. "But he loves you. Doesn't that mean anything to you?" Bisola chuckled softly, shaking her head. "Love?" She scoffed. "Love doesn't get me what I want. Power does. And Akinmade is too naive to see it." She took a deep breath, her gaze growing steely. "Once I have what I need from him, I'll be done. But for now, I play the part. You understand, don't you?" Ola hesitated, his feelings torn between his loyalty to Bisola and the reality of what she was saying. "I understand. But be careful, Bisola. You're playing a dangerous game." She smiled, her confidence unwavering. "I know, but it's a game I intend to win." The Banjo family was a name spoken with quiet caution in the city of Ibadan. Ambitious and power-hungry, they had long eyed the alpha's position, waiting for an opportunity to claim the influence they believed was rightfully theirs. Led by the cunning and strategic Chief Banjo, their clan had slowly crept into the city's power circles, always with a hidden agenda. Lanra's younger sister, Bisola, was no less calculating, charming in her beauty but driven by the hunger for status. She had long known that aligning herself with Akinmade would bring the Banjo family the recognition they so desperately sought. While Akinmade focused on his new role as alpha, the Banjo family worked quietly behind the scenes, pushing their agenda weaving their influence into every corner of society. They were patient, knowing that the time would come when they would need to act to claim the power they had been eyeing for so long. The Banjo family's ambitions were clear. Akinmade's rise could either be a boon to their plans or a threat to their ultimate goal. Either way, they would stop at nothing to make sure they weren't left in the shadows. Lara entered Temalad's salon with an air of grace and mystery, her presence immediately commanding attention. "Afternoon, Temalad," she greeted, her voice calm yet intense. Temalad smiled. "Madam Lara, what can I do for you today?" "I need a change," Lara replied, settling into the chair. "I trust you." As Temalad worked, Lara spoke casually about fashion and art, but there was always a faraway look in her eyes, as if she were lost in another world. Temalad felt an unease she couldn't shake. "Anything exciting in your life, Madam Lara?" Temalad asked, trying to keep the conversation light. Lara smiled mysteriously. "Excitement comes in many forms, but some things are better left unsaid." Temalad paused, feeling an odd chill, but quickly pushed the thought aside. She had no idea that Lara, graceful and beautiful, was hiding much more than she let on. Akinmade sat at his desk, his attention on a series of clan documents when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and saw a message from his mother, Lara. "Urgent, the Falad clan is planning an attack. They're making their move." His pulse quickened. The Falad clan, always hungry for power, had been a threat for years. Akinmade had known this day would come, but now that it was finally happening, the weight of the moment felt overwhelming. He stood up swiftly, his mind already shifting to strategy. He dialed his mother's number. The phone rang twice before Lara answered, her voice calm but laced with urgency. "Akinmade, they've mobilized. It's happening tonight. They've got forces ready to strike." Akinmade clenched his fists, his voice steady but resolute. "We won't let them catch us off guard. Gather the clan. We prepare for battle." He ended the call and moved to the window, staring out over the city of Ibadan. The Falad clan had crossed the line. Now, he would do whatever it took to defend his family and protect their territory. Akinmade and his siblings Wool, Ireti, Yinka, and Era stood together in the war room, preparing for the battle with the Falad clan. The tension in the air was palpable. "They won't take what's ours," Akinmade said, his voice firm. The clan shifted into their vault forms, ready to defend their territory. The night exploded into chaos as the two packs clashed in the forest, snarls and growls filling the air. Akinmade faced the Falad Alpha, their fierce battle shaking the ground beneath them. His siblings fought alongside him, Wool using his strength, Ireti's agility cutting through the chaos, Yinka and Era holding the lines. After hours of intense fighting, the Falad clan was pushed back. Akinmade stood victorious, his chest heaving, staring down the defeated Falad Alpha. The remaining enemies fled into the darkness. "We've won, but stay ready," Akinmade said, his clan rallying behind him, knowing the fight was far from over. Akinmade was still catching his breath after the battle when a sudden, sharp pain struck his side. Before he could react, a dark figure emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing with malice. "Falad clan isn't the only threat," the voice hissed. Akinmade barely had time to raise his defenses as the Martins clan struck. The attackers were fast, stealthy, and relentless, their claws sinking into Akinmade's flesh. Despite his strength and agility, the surprise of the ambush left him vulnerable. His body was raked with wounds, and before he could recover, he collapsed, blood staining the forest floor. His vision blurred as he struggled to stay conscious. The last thing he saw was the fading shapes of his attackers, disappearing into the night. Akinmade's body went limp, lost to the forest, as the sounds of battle faded into the distance. After hours of chatting and teasing with Rimalkan, Temalad finally decided to head home. The cool evening breeze greeted her as she stepped out of Rimalkan's house, her mind still lingering on their conversation. As she walked along the quiet path, something caught her attention, a figure lying still on the ground. At first, she thought it was just another stray animal, but as she approached, her heart skipped a beat. A large wolf, blooded and clearly injured, lay motionless by the edge of the forest. Temalad is terrified but couldn't walk away from what she saw. She knelt beside the creature, her hands shaking as she gently examined the wounds. "You poor thing," she muttered, looking around for any sign of other animals or people. Using the scarf she had on, She carefully tended to the wolf's wounds, applying pressure to stop the bleeding. It was clear this animal had been through a lot. She had no idea how it had ended up there, but instinctively, she knew she had to help. The wolf let out a soft growl, its eyes flickering open for a moment, but it didn't move. Akinmade stayed with it until she was sure the worst of the bleeding had stopped. Akinmade stayed by the wolf for a while, watching over it, making sure it was stable. The night grew colder, and exhaustion began to weigh on her. But she refused to leave until she was sure the animal was okay. At some point, her eyelids grew heavy, and she leaned against a nearby tree, closing her eyes for a brief rest. But when she woke, the night was eerily still, and the wolf was gone. She blinked in confusion, scanning the area. There was no sign of the creature, no trail, no blood, nothing. It was as though it had vanished into thin air. Akinmade stood, puzzled, her heart racing. She couldn't understand how it had disappeared so quickly, especially after being so badly injured. Was I dreaming? She murmured to herself, shaking her head as she made her way home, the mystery of the wolf lingering in her thoughts. Akinmade stumbled back into the mansion, his body sore but no longer bleeding. The strange attack had left him weakened, but to his surprise, his wounds had already begun to heal. As he entered the familiar warmth of the house, Lara was there, waiting. "You're back," she said, her voice a mixture of relief and concern as she took in the sight of him. "Let me see your wounds." He waved her off, trying to keep his discomfort at bay. "It's nothing, Mother. I'm fine now." Lara eyed him suspiciously, noticing that his wounds appeared to be completely healed. "How?" She trailed off, but didn't push further. There was something she didn't quite understand, but she had learned it over the years. Not to question Akinmade when he was being guarded. "Don't worry about it," Akinmade said, his voice soft but firm. "I'll explain later." Lara, still uncertain, let it go for now and led him to the dining table. The aroma of dinner filled the air, and she gestured for him to sit. "You need to eat. You've been through a lot tonight." Akinmade sat down, his thoughts drifting briefly to the mysterious woman who had helped him in the forest. His mind was filled with gratitude, but he kept it to himself. The last thing he needed was to raise suspicions. As Lara served him dinner, Akinmade quietly dug into his meal, grateful for the safety of his home. But his thoughts remained with the stranger who had crossed his path, unknowingly changing the course of his night. Bisola stood in front of Ola Martins, her expression furious and her voice sharp. "What have you done, Ola?" she demanded, her eyes flashing with anger. Ola shifted uncomfortably, his jaw tightening. "I thought it was the right time. He's getting too comfortable, too powerful. We needed to show him we're not afraid." "Show him." Bisola's voice rose. "You were never supposed to touch Akinmade. Not like this. We don't make moves out of jealousy or impulse. I told you he's crucial for my plan. Alive. We need him alive." Ola flinched, guilt written all over his face. "I didn't mean for things to get out of hand. I couldn't stand seeing him with you, acting like he owns you. He's weak, and I thought I could take advantage of the situation. Your jealousy is clouding your judgment." "Ola," Bisola said coldly, her hands clenching into fists. "Akinmade is still a key part of everything. If he dies or gets too wounded, it ruins everything I've worked for. You've made a mistake, but we'll fix it. For now, we need to keep him alive." Ola nodded, regret and fear in his eyes. "I'll fix it, Bisola. I promise. I won't make the same mistake again." Bisola turned away, her mind already working through the consequences of the attack. "You better not. If Akinmade falls, everything falls. And I'm not letting that happen. Not yet." Akinmade was busy at the salon, carefully trimming a customer's hair when her phone buzzed. She glanced at it briefly and saw a message from an unknown number. Curiosity piqued. She excused herself to the side for a moment and read the message. It was an invitation to a luxurious party at Lara's house, the prominent woman she'd known for months. The message was polite but elegant, detailing the event as an exclusive gathering for select guests. Akinmade's eyes widened as she scanned the words. The opportunity to attend such a high-profile event at Lara's mansion felt surreal. She returned to her customer, the scissors in her hand now moving automatically as her mind raced. The excitement of the invitation tugged at her, but the idea of mingling with the city's elite made her anxious. After finishing her task, Temelad sent a quick reply to Lara's invitation. "Thank you so much for the invite. I'd love to come." As the customer paid and left, Rimalkin, always eager for fun, spotted the phone in Temelad's hand. "Oh, what's this?" she asked, her voice teasing. "I bet it's an invite to a big party, right?" Temelad smiled. "It's from Madame Lara. She's hosting something at her place this weekend. I'm actually thinking of going." Rimalkin's eyes lit up. "You have to go. This is your chance to step out, Temi. You'll love it. And maybe you'll meet some interesting people." Temelad chuckled, feeling the flutter of nerves but also a sense of anticipation. "Maybe. I guess I'll see how it goes." Rimalkin showed up at Temelad's house, her energy as lively as ever. She stormed into the living room, a bag in hand. "Get up, Temi. You're going to that party. And you're going to look fabulous," Rimalkin announced, pulling out an elegant dress from the bag. Temelad hesitated, still unsure about the whole thing. "I don't know, Remy. I'm not really a party person." Rimalkin rolled her eyes. "That's exactly why you need to go. You never know what you're missing. Now, put this on. Trust me, you'll thank me later." With no room for argument, Temelad sighed and reluctantly agreed, letting Rimalkin dress her up. As Rimalkin zipped up the dress and styled her hair, Temelad couldn't help but feel a bit excited. "Now you're ready to dazzle," Rimalkin said, stepping back and admiring her work. "Let's go make some memories." At the party, Lara greeted Temelad with a warm smile as she entered. "I'm so glad you could make it, Temi. You look stunning," Lara said, her elegance shining through. Temelad smiled, still adjusting to the opulence of the mansion. "Thank you for inviting me, Madame Lara. This place is amazing." As the night went on, Temelad found herself mingling with the other guests, though a part of her still felt out of place. That was until she locked eyes with a tall, handsome man standing across the room, Akinmade. Their gazes met, and Temelad felt a strange, unexplainable pull. Akinmade looked at her intently, as if he recognized her from somewhere, though neither of them had spoken before. Just as Temelad was about to approach him, Bisola suddenly appeared beside him, pulling him away with a forced smile. "Come on, Akinmade. We need to catch up," Bisola said, her tone sharp, and Akinmade reluctantly followed her. Temelad watched them go, a bit confused but unable to shake the feeling that there was something more to their interaction. Despite the moment, she continued to enjoy the party, chatting with the guests and slowly becoming more comfortable in the luxurious setting. The night unfolded with music, laughter, and fine wine, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the mysterious Akinmade. The next morning, Temelad sat with Yemisi in the living room, drinking pap, while Rimalkin excitedly joined them, eager to hear about the previous night. "So, how was the party?" Rimalkin asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Tell us everything." Temelad smiled, still processing the events of the night. "It was really something. The mansion was huge, and everyone looked so glamorous. I didn't expect it to be that extravagant, but it was fun. I met a lot of interesting people." Yemisi leaned in, intrigued. "Did you meet anyone special?" Temelad hesitated for a moment, thinking about the tall man she had encountered. "There was one guy, Akinmade, Madame Lara's son. I tried to talk to him, but one woman came and pulled him away. She seemed very close to him." Rimalkin raised an eyebrow. "Who was this woman?" Temelad frowned, trying to recall her name. "I don't know her name. She seemed important though. She didn't like me talking to him, that much was obvious. But honestly, it didn't feel like anything too serious." Yemisi looked at her daughter with a knowing smile. "Interesting. But don't get too caught up in it, Temelad. You were there to have fun, not to get involved in any drama." Temelad nodded, though she couldn't shake the feeling of that strange connection with Akinmade. "I'm not worried, Mommy. It was just a little odd, that's all." Rimalkin grinned. "Sounds like you've got a mystery on your hands. Maybe next time, you'll find out more about him." Temelad laughed softly, shaking her head. "I'm not sure about all that, but we'll see, I guess." Akinmade sat in his study, his mind kept drifting back to the party, to the mysterious woman Temelad. There was something about her, a connection he couldn't explain. Despite the distractions of the ongoing clan matters, his thoughts always returned to her. He leaned forward in his chair, picking up the phone on his desk. "Call Kola," he ordered, his voice steady. A few moments later, Kola's voice came through the line. "Yes, Alpha. Find out everything you can about Temelad," Akinmade instructed. "Where she's from, who she associates with, everything. Don't leave anything out." Kola paused for a moment. "Understood, Alpha. I'll have the information for you soon." Akinmade hung up, his mind already racing with possibilities. There was more to Temelad than met the eye, and he needed to know exactly who she was. He couldn't shake the feeling that their paths had crossed for a reason. Akinmade visited Temelad's salon a few days later. She was surprised to see him but welcomed him warmly. "What brings you here?" Temelad asked as she excused herself from a client. "I was nearby and thought I'd stop by." "How's business?" Akinmade asked casually. "Busy, as always," she replied with a smile. "What about you?" "Still keeping the mansion in order." Akinmade chuckled. "Trying to. I wanted to talk more last time we didn't get the chance." They chatted easily about life, with Akinmade keeping the conversation light. As he stood to leave, he said, "It was good seeing you, Temelad. Let's talk again soon." Temelad smiled. "Of course. Take care." As Akinmade left, he couldn't help but think about her again, the connection still lingering in his mind. Akinmade arrived at Bisola's house, hoping to finally settle things between them. As he entered the living room, he froze. There, in the midst of the room, were Bisola and Ola, locked in an intimate embrace, their lips tangled in a passionate kiss. His heart dropped. The betrayal was clear, a gut-wrenching sight that hit him like a punch to the stomach. He stood there for a moment, stunned, before his anger flared. Bisola noticed him standing in the doorway and quickly pulled away from Ola, her eyes wide with shock. "Akinmade, wait. It's not what you think." Akinmade's voice was cold and sharp as he cut her off. "I've seen enough. Please, Akinmade." "Listen," Bisola began, rushing toward him. But he backed away, shaking his head. "No, I don't want to hear it, Bisola." His voice was filled with disgust, the trust between them shattered in an instant. Without another word, he turned and stormed out, leaving Bisola standing there, calling after him in desperation. But he was already gone, his anger consuming him as he left her behind. Chief and Mrs. Banjo arrived at Akinmade's mansion, their faces tense with worrying. They had come to plead on Bisola's behalf, hoping to convince Akinmade and Lara to forgive her for her actions. "Akinmade, Lara," Chief Banjo began, his voice careful but firm. "Please, you must understand. Bisola made a mistake. She was confused, but she never meant to hurt you." Mrs. Banjo nodded, her expression softening. "She's still young, and this was a moment of weakness. Please, don't let this tear the family apart." Akinmade stood in silence, his jaw clenched with anger. His gaze was cold as he stared at them, unwilling to let the weight of his emotions show. Finally, he spoke, his voice sharp. "No, Chief. No, Mrs. Banjo," he said, his tone unwavering. "What Bisola did is unforgivable. She betrayed me, and that's something I won't just forget." Lara, standing beside Akinmade, remained silent, her eyes full of disappointment. Akinmade turned away from the Banjo couple, his voice cold as he said, "I don't want to hear any more of this. Please leave." Without another word, he walked inside, his footsteps echoing in the large hall, leaving the Banjo family standing there, helpless and frustrated. A few days after the heated confrontation with the Banjo family, Akinmade found himself once again at Temelad's salon. It was quiet, the soft hum of hairdryers filling the air as he stepped inside. Temelad looked up from behind the counter and smiled warmly. "Back again?" she teased, her eyes lighting up at the sight of him. Akinmade smiled back, a little more relaxed this time. "I couldn't resist. You seem to be the calmest part of my day." Temelad chuckled and gestured to an empty chair. "Well, you're always welcome here. Can I get you anything?" "I'm good," Akinmade replied. "Just thought I'd drop by and chat for a bit." As they talked about life, work, and the city, Rimalkan walked in, her usual energy filling the room. "Akinmade, I see you're making yourself at home," she said, flashing him a playful grin. "Rimalkan," Akinmade greeted her with a nod, clearly enjoying the company. Temelad laughed and rolled her eyes. "Don't mind her, Akinmade. She's just always full of energy." The three of them chatted for a while, exchanging light-hearted stories. Rimalkan added her own flair to the conversation. teasing Temelot about her mysterious customer, all while Akinmade listened with a smile, his mind still lingering on thoughts of her. As the conversation carried on, the casual atmosphere between them grew more comfortable, but Akinmade's gaze never strayed far from Temelot. There was something about her that he couldn't shake, a pull that was growing stronger with each passing day. Akinmade returned home from a long day of work, his mind still tangled with thoughts of Bisola and the betrayal he had witnessed. As he walked through the door of his mansion, a security guard approached him with a sealed document in hand. "Sir, this came for you," the guard said, handing over the envelope. Akinmade took it without a word, his instincts telling him there was more to this than just a routine report. He entered his study, closed the door behind him, and carefully opened the envelope. Inside, he found a series of documents, confidential papers detailing a dark plan involving Bisola and her family. His eyes quickly scanned the contents, each line sinking deeper into his mind. Bisola's hidden motives were clearer than ever. The document revealed that she had been working with her family, the Banjo family, to undermine Akinmade's clan, planning to take control of his family's territory and power. They had been plotting behind his back, using their influence over Bisola as a means to manipulate him. Akinmade's fists clenched as the truth settled in. Bisola, the woman he had trusted, had been playing him all along, working with his enemies to destroy everything he had built. The anger surged within him, and he knew this would change everything. He sat back in his chair, his mind racing. The war for his family's survival was only just beginning, and he had no intention of losing to traitors, no matter how close they once were. Lara stood in the doorway, her heart heavy as she watched Akinmade, who was sitting at his desk, his gaze fixed on the documents that exposed Bisola's betrayal. She stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Akinmade, please, don't do this. She's sorry. She made a mistake." Akinmade's eyes lifted slowly, cold and unwavering. He rose from his chair, and just as he spoke, a flash of lightning struck outside, briefly illuminating the room. "I, Akinmade Awu, reject Bisola Banjo as my mate and my Luna," he declared, his voice cutting through the air like a blade. "The bond is broken." The thunder that followed seemed to echo his words. Lara stood frozen, her breath catching in her throat. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. "No," she whispered, stepping closer. "Akinmade, please. You can't mean that." But Akinmade turned away, his face hard, as the storm raged outside. "I mean it, mother," he said, his voice final. "She's nothing to me now." With those words, Akinmade walked out of the room, leaving Lara standing there, a heavy silence filling the space between them. The bond was severed, and there was no going back. Bisola stood in the quiet of her room, her heart racing as a strange sensation coursed through her. It felt as though something deep inside her had snapped, a jagged pain unlike anything she had ever experienced. The bond, it was gone. She collapsed to her knees, gasping for air, her chest tightening as if the weight of the rejection was physically crushing her. Her hands trembled as she touched her heart, trying to make sense of the aching emptiness that had taken hold. Downstairs, Chief and Mrs. Banjo, along with Lanra, felt the shift in the air too. Their faces turned pale as they sensed the severing of the bond. Bisola had been rejected, and the truth hit them like a wave. They rushed upstairs, finding their daughter crumpled on the floor, her face streaked with tears. "What happened?" Mrs. Banjo demanded, her voice trembling. "Bisola, what have you done?" Bisola looked up at them, her eyes wide with agony. "It's over," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Akinmade, he rejected me. The bond is broken." Lanra's expression twisted with frustration and anger. "How could you let this happen?" he shouted. "You failed us. You failed your family." Chief Banjo's face was grim, disappointment settling into his features. "You've ruined everything, Bisola," he said quietly, his voice filled with disbelief. "This was your chance to secure our future, and now it's gone." Bisola's cries filled the room as she sank deeper into despair. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't want to lose him," she sobbed, her body trembling with the weight of her failure. Her parents and Lanra stood in stunned silence, unable to find the words to comfort her. The bond had been broken, and with it, their hopes for a future tied to Akinmade's power. Akinmade in his full form stood in the quiet of the forest, the remnants of his anger still simmering beneath the surface. His mind was a whirlwind of confusion and doubt. The rejection of Basola weighed heavily on him. But there was something else gnawing at his thoughts. Temilade. The bond he had broken with Basola felt like a loss. But the connection with Temilade, though unspoken, felt different. It was deeper, more instinctual, yet terrifying at the same time. He stood there for a moment, feeling the pull of something stronger than he could control. The moonlight bathed him in a soft glow, and his instincts urged him to mark her. She was human, but his wolf side was drawn to her. He couldn't ignore the call. With a deep breath, he decided he would mark her. Even if she didn't know the truth of who he was, the bond would be formed. Meanwhile, Temilade was on her way back from Rimilkan's house, her thoughts light, until she felt a sudden unease in the air. She paused, her breath catching as she spotted a massive wolf ahead of her, its yellow eyes glowing in the dark. Her heart raced. The wolf took a step toward her, and before she could react, it lunged. The sharp pain in her neck sent a shockwave through her body as Akinmade's fangs sank into her skin. She gasped, her vision blurring. But the wolf was gone before she could make sense of what had happened. Stumbling backward, Temilade's hand flew to her neck, her heart pounding. She was terrified, unsure of what had just occurred. She felt weak, dizzy, but the pain soon faded. The wolf's presence lingered in her mind, but she shook her head, trying to dismiss it. Little did she know, her life was about to change forever. Basola stood in front of Akinmade's desk, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. She had spent the last hour trying to gather the courage to speak, but now that she was here, all she could feel was the cold weight of his rejection still echoing in her chest. Akinmade, please, she pleaded, her voice shaky. I'm sorry. I never meant for things to get this far. I was wrong. I was just trying to protect my family, but I care about you. You're my mate, my Luna. Akinmade remained silent, his gaze icy as he stared at her. He had been through too much already, and her words felt like poison now. A reminder of how far she had gone to deceive him. He had given her everything, and yet she had always been driven by her own selfish desires. Enough, Basola. Akinmade's voice was low, but there was a steel edge to it. You've made your choices. I can't forgive you for what you've done. She stepped forward, her hand trembling as she reached out to him. Akinmade, please, don't do this. I need you. We can fix this, we can. No, he interrupted, his voice growing firmer. You've broken our bond. The trust I had in you is gone. I've given you more chances than you deserve. Akinmade stood up from his chair, his posture rigid, as he moved toward the door. I reject you, Basola. You're no longer my mate. You're no longer my Luna. The words hit her like a slap. She staggered back, her face pale with shock. The bond, the connection they had once shared, shattered in an instant. She could feel it, like a deep, cold emptiness inside her. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Leave, Akinmade's tone was final. He opened the door, his face unreadable. Basola stood there, paralyzed by the sudden emptiness and the weight of her failure. She had thought she could fix everything, but now, it was too late. She turned slowly and walked out, tears streaming down her face, knowing she had lost him for good. 2 days after the bite, Temilade stumbled home from work, feeling increasingly weak. Her head throbbed, and her body felt heavy. As soon as she walked in, she collapsed into Yemisi's arms. Mommy, I don't feel right, she murmured, her voice barely audible. Yemisi, startled, quickly laid her down on the couch. What's wrong, Temilade? Rimilkan, who had followed behind, knelt beside her. You've been fine all week. Why is this happening? Temilade's fever spiked, and her body trembled with heat. Yemisi dampened a cloth and placed it on her forehead, her worry growing. We need to get you checked, Temi. But Temilade could hardly respond, her body too weak to fight the fever overtaking her. From his office, Akinmade felt a strange pull and unease he couldn't ignore. Something about Temilade didn't feel right. Without hesitation, he stood up, grabbed his keys, and left the office to find her. Akinmade followed the faint trail of Temilade's scent to the hospital, his heart pounding with concern. The moment he saw her lying pale and weak on the bed, something inside him stirred deeper than duty, stronger than instinct. Late into the night, when the ward was quiet and shadows filled the corners, he stepped silently into her room. He moved to her side, his eyes dark with emotion, placing a hand gently over her chest, just above her heart. He whispered an ancient Volf incantation, calling on the power of his bloodline. A soft glow radiated beneath his palm, and a warmth spread through her body. Tamalod stirred slightly, her breathing steadying. Minutes passed before her eyes fluttered open. She looked around, confused but relieved the pain was gone. Akinmade watched from the shadows, unseen, before disappearing just as quietly as he came. Busola sat quietly, her eyes red from tears, while Lanra paced the room, anger simmering beneath his calm facade. Chief and Mrs. Banjo exchanged glances, the weight of the rejection pressing heavily on them. "This isn't over," Lanra said, breaking the silence. "The Owu family humiliated us. We strike back, but smartly." Chief Banjo nodded slowly. "We'll take back everything they've taken from us." Slowly, silently, Busola, though heartbroken, clenched her fists. "If Akinmade wants war, then we'll give it to him." The Banjo family, wounded but burning with ambition, began to plan their next move, one that would shake the Owo family to its core. Lara, Yemi, and Wol gathered in the family's inner chamber, concern written on their faces. The tension had not eased since Akinmade's rejection of Busola, and the clan was beginning to murmur. Lara spoke first, her tone soft but serious. "Akinmade, the elders are already asking questions. Who will you marry now, after all that's happened with Busola?" Yemi added, "You need a Luna. The people need someone beside you, someone they trust." Wol folded his arms, watching his brother closely. "Is there another woman? Someone you've been thinking about?" Akinmade paused, his gaze distant as if picturing someone. A subtle smile curved on his lips, but he gave nothing away. "When the time is right, you'll all find out." He stood up, leaving them with more questions than answers. Akinmade arrived at Tamalod's house in the evening, dressed simply, but his presence felt heavier than usual. He asked to speak with her privately, his tone calm but firm. Tamalod, though surprised, agreed and led him outside to the small garden behind the house. Without saying much, Akinmade slowly brought out a small velvet box and opened it to reveal a beautiful ring. Then, with steady eyes fixed on hers, he went down on one knee. "Tamalod," he said softly, "you've brought light into my world in a way I can't explain. Will you marry me?" Tamalod's hands flew to her mouth in shock. She stammered, I don't understand. This is so sudden." Inside the house, Ramalkin peeked through the window, her jaw dropping. "Is that what I think it is?" Yemisi moved closer, equally stunned. "He's proposing." Tamalod stared at Akinmade, heart racing, her mind swirling with emotions. After a pause, she smiled softly, eyes glistening. "Yes, I'll marry you." Akinmade slipped the ring onto her finger, a rare smile forming on his face. Inside the house, Ramalkin let out a loud gasp and squealed with joy, hugging Yemisi tightly. Yemisi clutched her chest, eyes wide with happiness. "My daughter is getting married," she exclaimed. The two women rushed outside to embrace Tamalod, their faces beaming with excitement. None of them knew the deeper truth behind Akinmade's proposal, but in that moment, joy filled the air. Akinmade took Tamalod to his family's mansion in Ibadan. As they entered, his siblings Wol, Ireti, Yinka, and Ira greeted them, along with his mother, Lara. Akinmade introduced Tamalod proudly. "This is Tamalod, the woman I want to marry," he said. Lara smiled warmly. "I never knew my son had a crush on you all this while." Tamalod, feeling nervous but grateful, thanked them. His siblings, curious and surprised, exchanged glances. Ireti spoke up, "So, you're the one who has Akinmade's heart?" Tamalod nodded. "I guess." Ira teased, "You must be special then," causing Tamalod to laugh. Lara added, "We welcome you into our family." Tamalod felt a mix of relief and excitement. She was stepping into a new world, but with Akinmade's family's acceptance, she felt hopeful about their future together. Later that night, Akinmade and Lara sat in the quiet of the mansion's garden. The tension was palpable as Akinmade spoke, his tone firm. "I've made up my mind, mother. I'm marrying Tamalod." Lara's face hardened, her voice laced with concern. "Akinmade, she's human. She cannot understand the werewolf dynasty or its traditions. You can't just throw it all away for her." Akinmade stood, his posture defiant. "I do care about our traditions, mother. Believe me, Tamalod is real. She's loyal, unlike someone who pretended to be my mate and betrayed me." Lara's eyes flashed with anger. You think I wanted that? Vizsla's mistake doesn't change anything. Akinmade's voice grew colder. Maybe not, but it sure makes me see things clearly. I'd choose Tamalot over a cheating werewolf any day. Lara's face flushed with fury. You've gone too far, Akinmade. I've always had your best interest at heart. Akinmade turned away, his resolve unshaken. I'm doing what's best for me now. Lara, hurt and furious, stormed out of the room, leaving Akinmade standing alone. The weight of their strained relationship hung in the air, but he felt at peace with his decision. The staff gathered in the mansion's grand hall, whispering among themselves. Their eyes lingered on Akinmade's latest choice, Tamalot. Can you believe it? She's just human, one of them muttered. How can she possibly understand our ways or join the clan? Another voice chimed in, she's not even worthy. What could he possibly see in her? The murmurs continued, growing louder, until the door opened. Akinmade stepped in, his presence commanding immediate silence. His eyes swept across the room, locking onto the group of staff. Without hesitation, he addressed them in a calm, yet firm voice. Enough of this nonsense. The room fell completely silent. Tamalot is my choice, and I will not tolerate any disrespect towards her. If you cannot accept that, then you can leave. His gaze hardened as he surveyed the staff. She will be my wife, and that is final. No one will question it or belittle her in my presence. The staff stood frozen, stunned by Akinmade's words. The weight of his authority was palpable, and no one dared challenge him. Akinmade's voice softened slightly, but his tone remained unwavering. If anyone has a problem with this, speak now, or stay silent forever. No one spoke. With one last glance, Akinmade turned on his heel and walked out of the room, leaving behind a tense silence that filled the air long after he left. Evening had fallen quietly over the street. The salon lights flickered softly as Tamalot closed the last client's file and began tidying her space. Humming to herself, she moved from one corner to the next, unaware of the black van that had parked silently just across the road. The door creaked open without warning. 3 unfamiliar men stepped in. She looked up, confused but unalarmed. Sorry, we're closed, she said politely. They didn't speak. Before she could reach for her phone or back away, one of the men grabbed her arm tightly. Her eyes widened. What are you doing? Let go of me, she shouted, struggling. Another man moved swiftly behind her, pressing a cloth to her face. The world spun. Her limbs grew heavy. She tried to scream again, but it was too late. Everything faded. Outside, the black van's door swung open and slammed shut. Within seconds, it vanished into the darkness, taking Tamalot with it. Back inside the salon, her phone buzzed on the counter, Akinmade's name flashing on the screen. Who is behind Tamalot's kidnap? Find out in Alpha's Decision 2.